Hey everybody, it's Josh Rutledge, your co-host for FearScape Paranormal Podcast. Thank you so much for listening. If you'd like to support us more, please head over to our website, FearScapePodcast.com. There you can click on store and browse some really awesome t-shirts and maybe pick a couple up, or even go to our Patreon page and see how you can support us monthly. We love bringing you awesome content just as much as you like listening to it. Enjoy the show.
The following program is presented for entertainment purposes. WCHQ does not necessarily endorse the ideas presented.
FearScape is a program that explores the legends and lore around many creepy and scary things. Information is researched and presented in an entertainment fashion and is presented based off of what we found. Legends have a way of changing over time, so beware.
FearScape.
And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, back to another spooky edition of FearScape here on 100.9 FM WCHQ and the Destination Nation Network. I am your host, Stefan Gearhart, joined by my other host, as always, Mr. Josh Rutledge. How are you?
I'm doing great.
Man, you look...
Dapper?
Dapper? Yeah, I was going to say dapper. Man, talk about having creepy ketchup already. Dapper is exactly the word I was going to say. No, thank you all so much for tuning in as usual to FearScape, your home for all things spooky and weird. We've got a fun episode for you today. We got an opportunity to go out to Jailhouse Pizza in Brandenburg, Kentucky. This is in Meade County, Kentucky. Some of you may recall we had done an episode of the haunting of Meade County and covered some spooky stories there and held off on Jailhouse because it was much bigger than the rest of them. So we're here now.
Yep.
And
gotta talk about it.
You got to talk about it. And man, I'm just going to tell you right now, the pizza was bomb. It was really good. But before we get into that, let's jump into some spooky news because I got two stories for you tonight.
Okay.
Two. So we're going to jump into spooky news. All right, so like I said, got some spooky news. The first one is super fun. It is it's from Fox News. I know. But it's originally from the New York Post.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah. But it says Airbnb CEO says guests once complained because a haunted listing was a little too haunted. Yeah, man, that's what I'm talking about. Airbnb CEO Brian Chesky has opened up about the weirdest complaint a user has ever made, and it involves a debatably friendly ghost named Stanley. Not Casper.
Yeah.
Stanley. So Chesky says, one day a customer calls us and says that they want a full refund. And we say, why do you want a full refund? And they said, because the house is haunted and there's a ghost in the house. So Chesky's team needed to verify the claim and rang the host, assuming they would deny that their property was haunted and lacking any supernatural photographic evidence, it would be a case closed. Well, according to Chesky, unfortunately, the host confirms the ghost, says that it's a friendly ghost named Stanley, and that the ghost Stanley is indeed listed in the listing description. So, we read the listing, and Stanley was mentioned. So when Airbnb pointed this out to the spooked guests, they clarified that their issue was not with Stanley's presence, but that he was not friendly. So she says, yes, we knew about Stanley. That's why we booked it, Chesky says about the guest. But Stanley has been harassing us all night. Chesky was at a loss. How do you adjudicate that, he asked. There is no playbook for this stuff. Stanley, the ghost of questionable amicability, tops Chesky's list of strange Airbnb issues.
Let's see what they did there.
But he says the company gets millions of customer calls, and many are bizarre. So
what's really interesting about that, and I didn't realize this until recently, that's like a whole subsegment of people that specifically look for Airbnb listings that are like haunted.
Oh yeah. I'm not gonna lie. It's one of the things I check when I'm looking whenever I use Airbnb. So
I mean, that's just, I didn't know that it existed. I mean, is there a classification? Can you sort on that?
I don't think so, but there should be.
There probably should be.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like a whole untapped market.
Well, I mean, it's not untapped at the moment. I mean, if people are looking.
True, but if you're not advertising it.
I mean, somebody legit should come out with Airbnb. Like,
it probably already exists, and it's for negative reviews of Airbnb.
Oh, that kind of boo. Yeah. That sucks. So the next story I have comes from a British publication called The Independent. And it says, the headline reads, "Alien life could be more common than we thought, scientists say." And let's see here. This comes from writer Andrew Griffin. He says, "Alien life could be more common than we thought, according to scientists, but any extraterrestrial life out in the universe is likely to inhabit a very different star system, very far away," the researchers conclude. The new study looked at the theoretical twin of Earth and explored how it might fit in with a binary star system. Unlike our own solar system, such places have planets that revolve around two stars. They found out that in 87% of cases, those planets should be tilted similarly to Earth, that in turn is thought to be an ingredient for a climate that favors the birth of complex life like ourselves or aliens. Those star systems are found throughout the universe, suggesting that at least some of them could serve as a home for planets where alien life looks up to see two suns in the sky. Single star systems like the one we live in actually appear to be more rare. Multiple star systems are common, and about 50% of stars have binary companion stars. So this study can be applied to a large number of solar systems, said Gonji Lee, the study's co-investigator and assistant professor at Georgia Tech's School of Physics, in a statement. The researchers began by examining how the Earth tilts compared with Mars's tilt. They found that our relatively mild changes in tilt help make Earth a great place for life to begin and thrive, whereas the much more extreme variations on Mars helped destroy its atmosphere.
So I once read talking about Mars and their conditions. I once read an article that said that Mars used to be in a different orbit around the sun, and something cataclysmic happened that pushed it into its current orbit, and that's what caused the downfall of Mars.
It's possible. I mean, they talk about, the huge meteor asteroid. I mean, what that asteroid belt may have been part of that. Like, what caused that? Who knows?
Well, I mean, it went on to, that same article does talk about the asteroid belt and the inner one, and it said that it actually could have been a planet that broke up.
Right.
So,
I've heard that too, that it used to be a planet. Continuing on with this, they then looked at how the Earth might get on if it were situated in the system known as Alpha Centauri AB, which is our solar system's next door neighbor and is a binary star system made up of two stars known as A and B. Clever. The news was pessimistic in that system, offering bad news for those who plan to send a space probe to the system in hope of finding life. We simulated what it would be like around other binaries with multiple variations of the star's masses, orbital qualities, and so on, said Billy Quarles, the study principal investigator and research scientist in Lee's lab. The overall message was positive, but not for our nearest neighbor. So here's the thing. It's very egotistical for us to be looking for life to be created in the exact same situation that ours was in.
Yes. And I would also say that it's very lofty of us to look at anything outside of our own galaxy. We can't even travel outside of our own solar system.
Oh, I know.
So it's like, why look there, Yeah.
We can't even travel to Mars yet.
Right. So...
But I'm just like, we don't know what alien life needs to survive. We don't know what things could happen. You don't know that the core of a planet could be far hotter and it could create a different climate. I mean,
there's Titan, I believe, is the planet that has methane rain. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, we immediately dismiss it as life can't exist there, but our definition of life couldn't exist there but there may be some other definition of life that we haven't yet understood.
Yeah, sure. I mean, there could be some atmosphere that is completely different from oxygen, and they look at ours and go, how does anyone live in this oxygen-enriched environment, right?
So, I mean, you think about it, I think the other thing that's really interesting is when you say alien life, 9 out of 10 people immediately think of, like, green men.
Mm-hmm.
But alien life could just be bacteria. It could be plants. It could be animals. It doesn't have to necessarily be intelligent alien life. Just any other life than our own would be considered alien life.
Right. Yeah, just because it's not humanoid doesn't mean that it's not life. But yeah, so that's what I had this week for spooky news. So
it was stuff.
Yeah, it was a really interesting week. A lot of news came out this week.
Yep.
So so moving straight into creepy catch-up. I got a couple things, so let's go on and get into that. And this song is dedicated to Brad McQuarrie.
Creepy catch-up. Creepy catch-up. Creepy catch-up. Y'all, it's creepy.
All right, creepy catch-up. But no, it wasn't crazy, but man, so Monday I had to go to the Bardstown to teach.
Okay.
And Ben, my co-host of Unhappy Campers and runs Improv 502, him and I worked that together. He calls me up and he's like, hey, can you get there early and open up the doors? Well, the way we have to open up the doors is go up through the theater upstairs because there's a code on the door, which we have.
Yep.
So anyway, so I had to go up there. And I was like, oh, well, I'll go to the bathroom while I'm up here. And, like, I go there and I'm taking a whiz. And I hear. And I'm like, hey, somebody's in here, And I'm thinking it's the owner, Doug Shuddy.
Right.
And or maybe Ben got there early. I didn't know. But, yeah, I'm peeing. And so I get done. I wash my hands. And as I'm, like, drying my hands off, I hear it again. Knock on the bathroom door, and I'm like, dang, man, this guy's really got to go. So I open the door. Nobody
there.
Nobody. Nobody. Now, the skeptic part of me says maybe Doug was hammering something somewhere across the way, and the way the sound hit.
Pipes
but I mean,
are popping. Who knows?
It sounded like a wooden door being knocked on by a fleshy hand. Like, is what it sounded.
Well, so let me ask you this: if you're an American when you're out of the bathroom and what are you while you're in the bathroom?
What?
European.
I feel bad for those Europoopans. Those guys, man. That's where the Europoopin Union comes in. So that happened to me. That was super weird, and that made me like run downstairs.
Yeah.
It didn't feel like malevolent or anything like that.
But just somebody, the trickster.
But I've been there by myself, man, and I'm like, I got there a little early, so I knew I was going to be hanging out there by myself.
Right.
So, yeah, so that's my creepy catch-up. Do you have anything happening this week?
Nope.
I mean, I definitely had some crazy dreams, but not enough to share. Other
than the apparently just either I picked the word out of your brain or I pushed it to you.
Yeah, either way, invasive. Just kidding.
Just a little light probing.
All right. Well, that was creepy catch-up.
Creepy catch-up. Creepy catch-up. Creepy catch-up. Creepy catch-up. Y'all, it's creepy.
All right, so that closing song was also dedicated to Brad. Just a heads up, we're going to have Brad coming on, I believe, next week?
Yes.
Next week, Brad's going to be back. He's coming to say hello and kind of fill everybody in on where he's been and what he's doing, and we get to see the battle of the co-hosts and see how that goes. No, we're excited to have him come in and catch us up on what's going on with that. But this week, we are talking Jailhouse Pizza.
Yep.
We are talking Jailhouse Pizza. So you, me, my wife, your wife, and your two little biddies all went and got pizza at Jailhouse Pizza.
Yep.
And now I'd already heard it was pretty good pizza. And, everybody that had been there, like, of course, they were like, oh, it's haunted, but it's got good pizza. And so we went there, and it was a really nice place, man. Like,
a couple things for anybody who wants to go. It's in Brandenburg. I mean, I don't know. So the way that my GPS took me was through Indiana to Corydon, and then you drive like 12 miles down this down a lonely dark highway.
Yeah, for real, man.
And you go across the bridge, and then it's you're like right there. So, but I mean, it's so the drive, leading up to getting there was dark already, and it was like you're down this road that you can't see anything. So that kind of enticed the the spook
for
factor.
Sure. It's on Main Street there, and it's like not far from the river.
No,
I mean it's a little more than a stone's throw, but I mean it's
well, it depends on how strong you are, I guess.
Yeah, I mean you're up on top of a hill, and there's
right.
like another what are those called? The monument. There's a monument across the street. I didn't
obelisk.
get to see what it was.
I think it's an obelisk.
Yeah,
it's an obelisk.
And it, had like 4 people around it.
Yep.
Statues. I didn't get, like I said, didn't get a chance to look at it. But it looked pretty cool, and we forgot we were gonna stop, but we were like, full on pizza, must go home.
Well, plus it was cold.
Yeah, it was freezing. But we had fun, and they let us walk around. You can walk around, go upstairs to see the jail cells. There's some jail cells downstairs, and the ones downstairs have booths in them, so you can sit in there next to the John. What's
really interesting is when you're looking at the building, there's like the brick structure, and then on the off the back of the brick structure is like what looks like an add-on, right?
Yeah.
So when we were sitting there eating, I remarked that likely that was built later to accommodate the pizza parlor.
Yeah.
But in actuality, when I went back and looked at some images from earlier in the 70s and stuff, that was there.
Really?
So that piece was, I mean, obviously still built on at some point.
It definitely, it's definitely a different structure type.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a, big open space.
Right.
That's
wood,
where the main dining
made
hall
out of
is.
wood as opposed to brick, so that sort of,
But yeah, I really, really enjoyed it. The people there were really accommodating and cool.
Oh, yeah.
And, the pizza was really good.
Yeah.
I had a really good time, man.
Yeah, pizza was good. They didn't mess up my order, so that was all.
Yeah.
With the double pepperoni.
Yeah, baby. So let's get into the history of this and stuff, man.
So I want to talk a little bit about kind of the history of, Meade County, the Meade County jails in general. So there's been 4 total.
So this was actually a jailhouse before it became a pizza place.
Yep, it was it was actually sold in 1990 to the gentleman who bought it and now operates it as a pizza place. But prior to that, it was a jail. So this comes from the visitmeadecounty.org website, which is their Chamber of Commerce tourist site.
Which shout out to them too.
Yeah,
they are also very accommodating.
Very
to us.
helpful. We reached out to them for some information and details, and they were not hesitant to provide. So first of all, before Meade County was founded, it was formerly part of Hardin and Breckinridge counties. And so, it finally they kind of stood it up, and near the courthouse, usually convened in a large building in town, oftentimes a tavern, the strong, secure storeroom of a nearby cabin was used as the jail.
Okay.
So, you got everybody's going to have a beer, and then they're getting, judge and, I assume jury, because it's in the Constitution, but, but they're getting the trials are heard and stuff. And then anybody that needs to be held over is held in a local cabin close by.
Okay.
And actually, the what's really interesting is the penalties in these days included corporal punishment, like flogging, and even branding.
Wow. Is that where Brandenburg comes from?
Yeah, that's not where the name of the town comes from.
So it's not Brandenburg?
No, actually, the person who owned the tavern, their last name was I think Brandenburg or Brandon.
Well, I'm sure it wasn't Brandenburg.
Well, you never know.
It's probably Brandon. Hi, my name is Stefan Gearhart City.
Actually, it was the 2-story log tavern owned by Solomon Brandenburg.
Come on, get out of
here. I'm serious.
I don't believe your research.
Well, this comes from the tourism board, so you can.
Oh, well, I believe them then.
You can take it up with them. So yeah, the whole branding thing though is just, I guess it's kind of like the. So I don't know, the Pirates of the Caribbean. They had the P on their wrist or whatever to identify them as a pirate if they run into the. Now, granted, that's from the movie. I'm assuming though some of that is based on fact. I don't know, but I'm sure that they did some type of identification of people just to let it be known that they had a transgression.
Right.
That's kind of the ongoing humiliation of being found guilty of a crime.
Right.
So in the town common, there would also be a whipping post sunk in the ground with an iron ring affixed to it,
right,
where a miscreant was tied and whipped. Whipping was not a little thing. Near Irvington, a woman was severely whipped, causing her death.
Yeah, you can. I mean, if not just bleeding to death.
Right. So. Or even potentially in getting infected and things like that after the fact. So,
for sure.
So they did occasionally use stocks. If you think about it, you got your arms and your head sticking through there, and people can mock you and throw tomatoes and lettuce and whatever else
that they do.
Right. Again, just kind of continuing that ongoing public ridicule of being caught doing a crime. So on December 17th, 1823, is when Meade County was formed. And formed from a part of Hardin and Breckinridge counties.
Ooh, man, they're not far from their 100th anniversary.
Yeah.
A little centennial action.
Yeah.
Good for them. I love Meade County, man.
Well, is that where Rough River, I think, is down in that area?
Not sure. The reason I love it is when I first moved to Kentucky, so this was 1994, my uncle and me and my sister went for a drive. We were like, let's go explore.
Yeah.
Let's go look. And we ended up driving because we lived down the south end. We ended up driving up to downtown, and then we crossed the bridge. And he's like, well, let's ride down the river and let's go until we can find a bridge back.
Yep.
And so we did. We drove all the way down until we got to that bridge over there in Brandenburg, and we crossed over. And as we crossed over, we saw all these lights and everything because the fairgrounds are right there, and they were having the Meade County Fair. And I had the best time I've ever had. I saw my first demolition derby, man.
Wow.
We had so much fun, man. Just rides and carnival food and demolition derby, and had a blast, man.
That's awesome.
And just found our way back because this was the 90s. Ain't no GPS.
But yeah, I mean, I think Rough River is down either in Meade County or maybe parts of Meade County. And so I remember going down to Rough River. We stayed in a cabin.
Yeah, our buddy Tim's, right?
Yep. And we all thought it would be a really good idea to basically live off of bologna, eggs, and bread.
Not a good idea.
And so after consuming that for 2 meals, we also went over to the dam and decided, hey, remember when we were kids, we used to roll down the hill back? so yeah, that was not a good idea either. But but that's just some really good experiences that happened there. And so yeah, Meade County's great.
Looks like Hardin County is where we're looking, so not far.
Okay.
At all. Is what it's looking like here.
Okay. So bottom line, go visit Meade County.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, not far at all, man. Hardinsburg is just north of there, and head on over. So.
Yep, get you some pizza and then go sit on the river.
Yeah, go sit on the river.
On the river,
right on top of it.
Yep, that's what Jesus would do.
Yeah, it's did he do more than walk on it? I mean, was he just laid out?
What if he got tired?
Was it like the OG waterbed?
So yeah, court was held on East Hill in a 2-story log tavern, again owned by Solomon Brandenburg, now named for Brandenburg.
Not Solomon Grundy, born on a Monday.
While it can't be stated with certainty, prisoners so dangerous they needed to be jailed were likely lodged in the Hardinsburg or Elizabethtown jails until 1825, when Meade County Jail was built.
Sure. Yeah, I would imagine that as well.
Now, this Meade County Jail that was built in 1825, that was not Jailhouse Pizza.
Oh.
So that was a 2-story log structure with secure cells where prisoners awaiting trial were held.
So you're like, I gotta go to jail, but I'm going to the log cabin of prisons.
Right. You know, it's like Abraham Lincoln's prison, basically.
Yeah. Aw.
It was ordered by the county court on October 4th, 1825, to be built on a lot owned and purchased by from a William Fairley. I'm sure he sold it for a great sum of money. Probably not. The jail was completed in April of 1826 and located a short distance south of the Log Tavern on East Hill. In the jail, there were quarters. Now, I found this very interesting. In the jail, there were quarters for the jailer and his family.
So they lived there.
Yep.
I mean, that makes sense back then. I mean,
well, because
plus a small town.
They had
county.
to cook meals. They had to give, make sure that any of the prisoners had water and were fed,
right,
and so on and so forth. So it just made sense for them to constantly, and of course, to respond to potential, emergency events or whatever the case may be. So
yeah, I guess that makes sense, especially in a small town. I mean, you're not going to have a huge staff. So
yeah, the disposition of prisoner cases might result in a fine, corporal punishment that we mentioned before, sentence to time in jail, or worse. Now, I'm going to read this next piece here, but I had some back and forth as to whether or not I was going to read it as it was written. But I think it's important to note. So in 1848, a slave girl named Lucy Hamilton was hanged for killing the son of her owner. Now, I don't want to get into the political aspects of that,
sure.
but I mean, so she was pregnant when she killed the man, and because of the resignations of the judge and foreman of the jury, she lived long enough to deliver the baby before she hanged. She was taken in a cart from the jail on a 20-minute ride to a grove and hung. Right before she died, though, she handed her baby off to the sheriff's wife, I guess, for care. So that was only there only actually been two hangings in Meade County. This was one of them.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Makes you wonder, because I know that this is where that was across the street from the high school. So I wonder if that was like if they ever saw a spirit hanging or any of those things. A lot of those hanging places are so just frightening.
Well, just hangings in general is just a very I don't know the right word, but it's just a very brutal way to die.
Yeah, it's awful. I've been watching this documentary on Netflix. I can't remember the name of it offhand now, but it's about this guy that was accused of being Ivan the Terrible, a gas chamber worker during the Holocaust. And, in the end, you never do know officially if he is or isn't, because it's like on one hand he was acquitted, on one hand he was found guilty. I mean, they took him to Israel, and he was living in Cleveland. They took him to Israel because he looked, just based off this old picture, that he looked like this guy. And then he was acquitted later on because there was no actual proof. But then in his 90s, he was, found guilty again.
Right.
But he died before his execution. But during the first execution, during the first trial, they were actively building a hangman station inside this courthouse in Israel. And they were there's footage of them building this mechanical huge. They're spending all this money before the guy's even found guilty.
Yeah, so in their minds they had resolved that it was.
Oh yeah, dude, it's messed up. And even after watching it, I still don't know how it.
Yeah,
I still don't know. Anyways, but yeah, hangings are just.
It's just because of the brutality of it, the soul probably doesn't have a chance to really reconcile with things. And so so moving on a little bit. It talks a little bit about some of the whipping for crimes that occurred, and so first of all, whippings were public, like they would tie you up in front of a crowd of people and do it. So the last flogging at Brandenburg's whipping post was publicly administered to 3 men for the crime of stealing chickens. Now, you may think, is that really worthy of flogging, but it goes on to say that in those days, people depended on chickens for food.
Yeah.
And so it was basically like you were stealing their livelihood.
Yeah.
So, today, in today's terms, it would be like robbery or burglary.
Right.
And so I don't know what the common equivalent for whipping is. Maybe it's time served in jail. I don't know. But it's probably, I think at the time, the punishment likely fit the crime.
Yeah. Or community service. I don't.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know what to the modern day related item. So, so it goes on to say that occasionally the miscreant had a choice of taking the sentence of the court, such as when Daniel Boone. I didn't know Daniel Boone was a judge in.
Yeah, I didn't either. I mean, I know he, of course, did a lot here in Kentucky.
Yeah,
so.
but this is like when I came across, like, wow, Daniel Boone, he just moved around a lot. But he would make a statement that basically said 10 and done or bound over for appeal. So you can either take your lashes and be done with it, or you can stay in jail while we review your case and then potentially still get your 10 lashes.
Yeah, it's like when my dad was like, do you want a whooping or do you want 2 weeks grounding? It's a tough choice. Yeah, it's like I can catch the whooping, but it's going to be bad.
Well,
it's going to be bad.
Yes, but in this example, it's do you want a whooping or do you want 2 weeks grounding? And at the end of your grounding, we're going to review again to see if we're still going to give you the whooping.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Putting it like that makes a big difference.
Yeah. So, yeah, sometimes prisoners would choose the whipping post instead of being held over because being held over meant they couldn't work their farm, they couldn't ply their trade, so on and so forth. And,
right.
and in those times, I mean, that stuff was huge. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it's not today. Like, if you have to spend jail time today and you can't work your job, I mean, there are consequences that kind of trickle down from having to do that.
Right.
So what's interesting, too, is that the second jail sometime later had a fenced animal pen where they would pull in stray animals. So kind of like...
so they're animal services, like
yeah,
dog pound.
Right.
I mean, that makes sense to be a community, government center.
Right.
So.
Well, I wonder how much of that, thinking about what we know now around the human psyche and how much being able to take care of an animal has an influence or impact on how you view life. To have prisoners maybe have a responsibility of taking care of a stray dog or whatever may have had some type of a rehabilitation effect.
I mean, my dog Kenobi, we rescued him from Kentucky in a pug rescue, which I highly recommend. But one of the things they do when they get any pug is they send them to what's called pug prison, and it's a prison in Illinois where they spend, depending on the dog, 3 months to a year working with a prisoner that trains them. I mean, we have the prisoner's journal. Like, of every day he's supposed to write down the things that he did and blah, 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 blah. And it's interesting because there was like a 2-week period where he stopped journaling because obviously he got sent to the hole or something because there was another guy that had to work and he said, hey, the other guy got in trouble, yada, yada. And then in the end, like, the guy was like, this dog has become my best friend. He's just like, I'm sad to lose. And I'm like, they don't allow us to know who they are or I would send pictures. But yeah, I mean, he just talked about how that was the best thing in the world was having this dog to work with, and it made him want to keep his stuff together.
Yeah, I mean, there's a show I think on TLC called Pit Bulls and Parolees, and that's kind of the same thing when you have a parolee and you give them a responsibility, and they're less likely to maybe fall back into that life.
Sadly, the main murderer in the Shonda Scherer case, who just recently got released, I saw a documentary that she was on, and that's what she's been doing. Is she's been working with animals this whole time. It's been part of her rehabilitation, and she wanted, when she got out, I mean, that was the thing she wanted to continue to do. So.
So yeah, there was a dog pound at the jail. So before August of 1854, a new jail was built.
Okay, so this is the second jail. Okay.
So the first one, we have a 2-story log cabin. Now we have the second jail. All we really know about it was a brick structure.
So this also is not Jailhouse Pizza.
Correct.
Okay.
So it was a brick structure. the court ordered the old log jail lot in Stray Penton be sold. It brought $27 to the county treasury.
Woo!
Now, I went ahead and went, because I always found it really interesting to look at like an inflation calculator.
Same, yeah.
To see what that would equate to today. So in today's dollars, it would be $827. So not really.
Still not great.
Yeah. I mean, when you think about it, it probably sits on maybe an acre of land. That's a really cheap acre. So little is known, though, about the second jail, other than in 1858, there was an armed attack on it by Indiana men bent on freeing 3 Hoosiers, hailed without bail or court dates for 14 months.
Wow.
Horace Bell and his brother John, after arming themselves, rowed a boat across the river to Brandenburg and attacked the jail.
We shall take the jail down.
The jailer was in Garnetsville, as well as half the population of Brandenburg, attending a barbecue.
It still happens, people. It still happens
Yeah.
out in Western Kentucky. It still happens.
Yep. So they freed John and Horace's father and brother and held off an armed party of men with gunfire while they made their escape to Indiana. It also held some famous Confederate guys. Marcellus, is that right?
Yeah.
Marcellus Jerome Clark. It has an alias of Sue Monday.
Mm-hmm. I'm familiar with that, yeah.
So it threw me off because Marcellus sounds like a man's name, but then Sue sounds like...
It is, but Sue is part of the alias.
Okay, all right. And then another Confederate was locked in jail by the name of Henry Medkiff. This jail was the scene of the second legal hanging in Meade County on February 18th, 1889, where they hung an axe murderer, which I've got actually a story about that, so we'll get to that in here in just a minute.
All right. So, quick question. These jailhouses, these two, were they at least on the same spot that Jailhouse Pizza was, or?
So, actually, I've got to back up a little bit because my news story here says that this is the building where Jailhouse Pizza was, but actually, I found that there was a second one built. Jailhouse Pizza was the third one because I used the bricks from the second one to build Jailhouse Pizza. So I must have missed something here in my research, but there was actually. So the Jailhouse Pizza building was the third building, second brick building. There's a fourth one now that stands up on top of the hill that they use today.
Okay.
So they did use bricks from the second building to build the building that is now Jailhouse Pizza.
Okay.
They also, although I couldn't find evidence that this was the case, they also did, I'm sure, use other things from even the previous log cabin jail that they would have still been
relevant
or viable, like maybe some of the sail parts or whatever,
the iron bars
or so on. Okay,
sure.
But you know, I even got a note here where it says bricks from the second jail building were used at the construction of the 1906 building. The 1906 building is the one that is Jailhouse Pizza.
Okay.
So, the 1906 building was built for a total cost of $7,947.
All right.
That's not bad for a building.
No.
I didn't do that translation to see what that would look like from 1906 to current dollars, but it's probably not a huge number.
Yeah.
And it operated until 1976. In 1990, it was sold and became Jailhouse Pizza.
Right. So then the new jailhouse is a different place, the fourth one.
The fourth one is a completely different place.
Completely. That makes more sense.
It's up on top of the hill close to the new courthouse.
Right.
Because, and you say, well, why is there a new courthouse?
Why is there a new courthouse, Josh?
Well, in 1974, there was an F5 tornado that destroyed the courthouse and about half of Brandenburg.
Dang, didn't they have one like 20 years later too? Like 21, 22 years old? Because it was like 95, 96.
But I don't think it was like an F5.
No, it was. It
was
destroyed most of Brandenburg because I saw it from my porch at my house. Dad and I could see it. Like, it knocked out a bunch.
So
it's just weird that it was like 20-something years later.
I do want to talk a little bit about the tornado. I'll get to there in just a minute because I think it's relevant.
Yeah.
So one last couple things here. There was some notable prisoners of the jail that is now Jailhouse Pizza, and that was Hank Williams Sr.
Shut up, tearing my beer.
The John Hunt Morgan of Morgan's Raiders.
Yeah.
Yep. And outlaws Jesse and Frank James were guests of the old Meade County Hotel, which was across the street from the jail.
Everybody in Kentucky's got a Jesse James story.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody.
I think our friend Thorny, who came on the show, he once told me that he is related to Jesse James.
I'm sure he is. He's related to George Washington, Snoopy, everybody.
Snoop Dogg, everybody.
Yeah, everybody.
All right, so moving on to the tornado. So, to this day, this is the most, I'm trying to think, the deadliest tornado to hit the U.S.
Really?
It killed 31 people, 28 from Brandenburg alone.
Jeez.
It was at the time that it first formed as an F3, grew to an F4, and by the time it hit Brandenburg, it was an F5.
Jeez. They call it a super outbreak.
The twister was probably extremely wide beneath a very low cloud base. May have looked more like a solid wall of cloud. Imagine that. A solid wall of cloud coming at you, rather than a slender funnel that most people associate with tornadoes.
Yeah, just heads up, after an hour after the Brandenburg tornado, that same supercell spawned an F4 tornado that hit Louisville.
Oh.
So Louisville got hit pretty bad too. Touched down at the Kentucky Fair and Exposition Center and destroyed a ton of the barns and part of Freedom Hall.
Oh, well.
The same supercell, so yeah.
So it says the storm that hit Brandenburg area destroyed 128 homes, 30 businesses, and of course the courthouse, which prompted the building of the new courthouse. The track, or so for the what they call the eat path, what the tornado tore up, was 2,400 feet wide. To give you context, there's 5,300 feet in a mile, so it's like a half a mile wide path. The tornado crossed the Ohio River.
God, could you imagine that water? I've seen water spouts when I lived in Florida. I would sit in this balcony that overlooked the beach in Seaside, Florida, and you could see little storms and stuff all the time, and I saw two touch and hit the water and become water spouts. Lasted 30 seconds at the max, but it was crazy.
But so when it crossed the river, it was F4 strength, so still great, hugely strong. But then it quickly dissipated over southern Harrison County.
Jeez, this says that the Brandenburg tornado is the only F5 in Kentucky history.
Wow.
Yeah, ever. That's nuts, man.
So, I'm sure this is a touchy subject, I know, but I'm sure that maybe some of the spirits of those folks that were caught in that.
Absolutely.
So, let's switch gears a little bit and get over into...
Yeah, let's get into the spooky stuff instead of this downer stuff. I mean, we're running low on time anyway, so let's do it, baby.
All right, so these stories come to us courtesy of Gerald Fisher of the Meade County History Museum and Annie Hamilton, the director of Meade County Tourism.
Thanks, guys.
Again, super helpful. I really appreciate it. So, the Ashcraft Hotel. This used to stand across the street from the jailhouse. One day in 1858, a man named Stanley Young saw his former uncle, Marsh, speaking
with Dr. Owings and attorney Walter Gresham of Corydon. Marsh had killed Stanley's father in Corydon, Indiana, 9 years earlier, and Stanley swore to avenge his father's death. Sensing he had the opportunity, he crept up the back stairs of the hotel, quietly slipped onto the balcony. Taking careful aim, he shot down into Marsh's head, killing him instantly. Stanley ran to the courthouse where the horses were tied and made his escape, never to be seen in this area again. Later, he escaped capture and came back to Kentucky, changing his name to Bill Marion. Some say when the moonlight is right, the ghost of William Marsh can be seen on the sidewalk facing the vacant lot, his lips moving as if he's speaking to someone.
Ooh, that's good. That's good.
So, if we are able to get out there and do an investigation sometime, we should do some time outside.
Oh, for sure. For sure. Can I do the next one?
Go for it.
Go back and forth on these bad boys. This one is about James Ross. Let's see here.
This jail was built in 1882 with the new courthouse, now destroyed in the 1974 tornado. On April 6, 1888, James Ross killed Benedict Rhodes of Flaherty with an axe. Rhodes was a prosperous farmer who lived alone near the Big Spring community. He was found brutally murdered. Sheriff Rawling found an axe smeared with blood, whiskers, and brain matter. An onlooker commented the axe was like one owned by James Ross. Ross was a man who sometimes did farm work in Flaherty. Sheriff Rawlins began inquiring about Ross and his friends. Finally, in the northwest area of Meade County, Ross was arrested on suspicion of murder. He soon confessed and was sentenced to hang. He was given 2 trials. The first and second juries found him guilty. After the second trial, he was sentenced to death. Ross filed another appeal, but it was denied. Governor Buckner set his execution date. While awaiting execution, a fence 20 feet high was built on each end between the jail and the courthouse where the witnesses would gather. Ross was led out the front door of the jail to the gallows and up the steps. Sheriff Rawling and Deputy Woolfolk walked with him. He stood on the trap, bent down, and for some reason untied his shoes. The sheriff tied him, placed a hood over his face and noose around his neck. On a signal, the trap was sprung, and after hanging for 21 minutes, his body was cut down, and Ross was pronounced dead.
So, a couple interesting things. In my research, I found that the sheriff built the gallows for this hanging. They were right outside of the jailhouse.
All right, so he's a carpenter as well.
Yeah, much like. Anyways, and then after hanging for 21 minutes, that's a long
time. Why did he untie his shoes?
I don't know.
And then I'm like, man, like if I'm out there and some dude's like, hey man, can you help me tie my shoes? I'm running. Actually, he'd probably be like, because he choked for 21 minutes. But, hey brother, you're gonna help me tie my shoes. I'm gone.
Yeah.
I'm gone.
All right. This one's called the Witchcraft Suicide.
In the late 1890s, a man named Buck Paget lived with his family in a shack in Paradise Bottoms. He killed his wife with an axe. He then took a straight razor and slit his own throat. So, he believed in witches and demons, and accused his wife of hexing him by putting Indian turnips in his food. He was known to be a hard worker, but because of his mean-spirited personality, he was unliked. His wife and children were verbally and physically abused and pitied by their neighbors. When he arrived home one day, after visiting his family in Bullitt County, he sent his children on errands and murdered his wife with the axe. After seeing what he had done, he attempted suicide with his razor. However, he did not cut deeply enough to cause his death, but lost a great volume of blood. He was found later by his teenage son, who told the constable, who in turn sent for the sheriff. The sheriff and coroner waited until the next day to move him to Meade County Jail. The killer's reputation was so well known that the feeling against him so harsh, one of his neighbors volunteered to help
him by finishing the suicide Buck began. That night in jail, his wound opened and he died from his suicide attempt.
Yeah, dude is haunting that place for sure.
For sure. Yep.
For sure.
Yep.
I mean, already the guilt of murdering his family and then surviving and then dying horribly slowly like that in a jail cell. Ugh.
Well, I mean, the blood loss alone, just the pain and agony associated with that type of death, I mean, just is going to be horrible.
That story's awful, man. Like, and it's funny because it's like it talks about like the witchcraft suicide, but it's like it's barely touched upon.
Yeah,
you know,
the only part of the witchcraft is that he thought his wife was hexing him.
Right. So that to me says he didn't believe in demons and witchcraft as much as he thought that his family was. But I mean, who knows? You know, like, God, did he think that his wife was possessed? Was she possessed?
Yeah.
Like, was he
possessed?
Was he possessed?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Man, that's a creepy story, man. And then the kid too, like, man,
coming home to find number one, the gruesome part of being murdered with an axe. I mean, that's gruesome alone. So you come home, you find that your mom has been murdered by your dad with an axe, and your dad's laying on the floor bleeding out. I mean, that's horrifying.
It almost makes you wonder at first if he thought his dad had been attacked as well.
Right. Yeah.
Like, wonder how that came out. Like that it.
You know, I came home and my mom and dad had been attacked.
Yeah.
I mean, that's probably the way it was reported
at first.
At first, yep.
And then they find the razor in his hand.
Right.
Jeez, man. All right, there's another one here. This is the last one we got. Here is the Pauper Cemetery. Directly down the street from the jailhouse and on the riverfront is the old Pauper Cemetery. From time to time, bodies of people who fell in the river and drowned were found washed on shore in Brandenburg. The town marshal or sheriff would telegraph a description to cities upstream, such as West Point and Louisville. The body would be buried and sometimes reinterred elsewhere when next of kin claimed it. A low-lying area near the river was designated the Pauper Cemetery, indicating others might be buried who were unable to afford a grave elsewhere. Many bodies were buried, and few had markers. Those that did had them washed away by the annual flooding. No one can say exactly where these graves are located, but bodies still rest along the riverbank, and spectral forms are sometimes seen at night.
Oh, I'd want to do an investigation there, too.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, and pauper cemeteries are also known as a way to deal with criminals as well that have been executed, that have no family or, you know, whatever. They just toss them in a pauper's grave. And, in fact, there are some criminal graveyards that are out there. I don't know as much here as much as in England, but, yeah.
So needless to say, a lot of stuff going on at Jailhouse Pizza. So go get some pizza, listen for some ghosts. I really do want to try to get out there and do an investigation sometimes. That'll be.
Yeah, so if you guys are listening, we would like to do an investigation. But yeah, no, we're very interested in this. This was such a great dive into this, and I'm sure we haven't even scratched the surface. And I know we say that a lot, but it's true.
Yep.
Like I said, with the dive into the Meade County, I mean, Meade County itself is just filled with horror stories. I mean, like these hauntings and scary things and all that jazz. Like, whew.
Yep. So it was an interesting research item. Just kind of digging into the history of everything, and then those couple of stories that were given to us. But I'm sure that there are people who have a lot more stories than what we're able to find. And so obviously, if anybody listening has any story about Jailhouse Pizza, we'd love to hear about it. In fact, I reached out to the owner to see if he had any stories. Unfortunately, I didn't get a response back in time to be able to have for the show. But yeah, I mean, I'd love to hear any stories that folks have about, maybe spirits they've seen or just unexplained events that's happened at Jailhouse Pizza or in the area of Jailhouse Pizza. I'd love to hear about it. And as a reminder, you can send us those at FearScape Podcast@gmail.com.
That's right. Or even just drop them as a message on our Facebook page or on Twitter. Hit us up with a direct message. Any of that stuff. Like, send us. We're on Instagram and Twitter at FearScape Pod. But yeah, speaking of listener stories, we've got one that's kind of creepy.
Yep.
I mean, as they all are, of course. But this one, like I said, I reached out to some folks on the haunted history of Kentucky, and was pretty lucky to find some good stuff on there. People are pretty open on there. Thank you to everyone there for
willingness to
that.
share.
Yeah, for that. But yeah, this one comes from, what is her name? Judy Lindsay. This comes from Judy Lindsay, straight off of Haunted History of Kentucky.
When I was about 8 years old, my sister and I were told to gather some pears from a tree at a house that we had once lived in. Being young and curious, we went in the old empty house to look around. Nothing much was there until we headed up the old steps to the attic. Halfway up the steps, I stopped. I saw a woman sitting in a chair, and I heard a baby crying. There was this bright light around them, so it was hard to make out the exact form. I don't know how long I stood there watching. It was like I was stunned or in shock. When I looked around, my sister was gone. I ran to the window that we had used to get in, and she was outside. When I got out there, I asked her why she left me, and I said, "Couldn't you hear her? Didn't you hear the baby cry?" She said she had not seen or heard anything. Years later, my sisters and I went back. I took pictures of where I had seen this. The first pic looks like a face showing up in the same spot. This is why I believe in ghosts.
So yeah.
Yeah, so
her sister didn't experience. I'm like, at first I thought she was going to be like, my sister said she wasn't even in the house with me, and I was going to be like, oh God.
Or like, I was looking for you everywhere. You were gone for 15 minutes.
Oh
like,
yeah, that would have been even creepier.
But, yeah, that's what I mean. I would have. Interesting to hear what the sister recalled for. Why did she go outside without her sister?
Without her sister, like leave her there. Yeah, I mean, I guess they split up. But yeah, it's like, man, baby's crying.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it makes me wonder. I mean, I'm sure this is the case, but if you have residual haunting, I'm assuming that whether there are people there or not, things are still happening in a space.
For sure.
But if you have an intelligent haunt, I wonder if the activity picks up or declines if there's no other presence around.
I don't know. I'll tell you what, though. It makes me wonder what happened with that woman crying and then the baby crying and just strange. Like, man, I wish you, if you remember, if Judy, if you're listening, if you remember where that was, like, did you ever get a chance to look into the history of that house? Like, was something happening there? God, I would love to research that.
Well, she said she went back and took a picture, and there was like a face in the picture.
In it,
so yeah. I bet you there's some great history for that place.
Yeah, I agree. But yeah, that's our listener story. Once again, please send those in to us, fearscapepodcast@gmail.com, or on our Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. Send us those stories, or if I find you, give me permission. That's what I want. I want your permission to read those. But yeah, I guess we got to start to get out of here. So Jailhouse Pizza. Get out there. It's in Brandenburg, Kentucky. It's on 125 Main Street. You can go to their website, jailhousepizza.com. They have a prisoner's pardon challenge, which I have a banana-shaped stomach, so I can't do it. But it is, I'm very interested in this, though. I would have totally done this back in the day with Justin. 2 people, 12 pounds of pizza, and 60 minutes.
Yeah.
A team of 2 people has 60 minutes to complete the entire pizza to receive the ultimate Jailhouse Pizza fame. This pizza is 30 inches big, weighing in at approximately 12 pounds, and your team has 60 minutes to stomach the whole pie.
I mean, I got to tell you, as someone who ate there just recently, the dough is just so thick and fluffy. So to me, just a pizza with no toppings would be hard with just the dough.
Yeah. So if you complete the challenge, your meal is absolutely free, and you get a photograph placed on the Jailhouse Pizza Hall of Fame. If you fail to complete the challenge and suffer the death row sentence of paying the bill and being sent to the wall of shame, cost if not finished is $60 to perform the challenge, and you will also receive 2 Jailhouse Pizza t-shirts whether you finish or not.
Nice.
So at least you're going to get 2 t-shirts.
Right. I attempted
Yeah, I attempted that. Also, they also do ghost tours as well. You can check out their ghost hunts. They do, let's see here. Food is not included, people, okay? Food is not included, though it does seem like they might be giving you some drinks, like some Cokes and stuff. But yeah, you can do a ghost hunting package. It looks like 0 to 6 guests you can get in for $100 and do a couple hours overnight. It looks like 4 hours. Looks pretty cool, man.
Yep.
Looks pretty cool. I'm pretty excited. Jailhouse Pizza, we love you. We had such a great time there.
Great pizza.
Great pizza. Like I said, jailhousepizza.com. They're open Tuesday through Tuesday through Sunday. They're just closed on Monday like good people are. But yeah, I guess we're going to get out of here. Go visit Jailhouse Pizza. Let us know if you guys had any stories while there.
Yep.
And so on that, we're gonna get out of here. And I guess that's it. This has been FearScape. I hate leaving, man. This has been FearScape on 100.9 FM WCHQ, as well as DestinationComics.com. You can visit our podcast as well as all the other DNN podcasts at DestinationComics.com/DNN. And on that, I have been Stefan, and I will catch you on the flip side.
This has been Josh. The truth is out there.
And as always, people, don't forget to grab those blankets and hold them tight. Good night, everybody.
Good night.